All right, I think that's close enough. We can go ahead and begin the presentation today. So welcome to our first of a long series of webinars for the September 2024 admission cycle for the Graduate Diploma in Immigration and Citizenship Law program, or GDipICL program for short. So this is the start of the admission process. The application has now opened for September 2024 admission consideration, and we'll be hosting a webinar at least once per week for the remainder of the admission process or the application process, just to provide information to all of our prospective applicants and future students as to what they need to know about the program and about the admission process specifically, so that their application, your application, is ready to go and we're able to review it as easily as possible. Before we begin today, though, I want to begin with our acknowledgement of territory. So Queen's University physically situated on unceded traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. It is important for us to always acknowledge the unceded territories of the indigenous populations, of the indigenous peoples who originally inhabited the land. Queens is physically situated in Kingston, and we are on traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. There's lots of work being done regarding indigeneity at Queen's for our self-identifying Indigenous students. I encourage everybody to learn more by visiting the resources at the Office of Indigenous Initiatives website, as well as the Four Directions Indigenous Student Center. If there are any students who self-identify as Indigenous who enter our program, there's a wealth of information and supports available to you via the Four Directions Indigenous Student Center, and we welcome all of our students into our program equally. So this is me. I'm the manager of admissions and recruitment for the GDipICL program. I've been doing this for 6 admission terms now, and hopefully I'll provide some wisdom and some information that will help make the admissions process easier for you. So here's our agenda for the day. So I'm going to go over a brief program overview of the GDipICL just to give you a sense of what the program's all about. And then we're going to specifically spend the remainder of the time on the admissions process itself. We're going to talk about each individual admission requirement. I'm going to provide tips regarding each of those admission requirements. And then I'm going to talk specifically about the admission cycle, which has officially opened. I am also going to open up the Q&A later on in the presentation. So the majority of your questions should be answered by what is provided here in my presentation today. But for any additional questions, we'll open the Q&A and we'll ask you to ask your questions there. And myself and my team member, Jolene, who's here with us today, will answer your questions as best as possible. After this, I'll review some next steps and give some general thanks, telling you about the remainder of the webinar schedule if you want to attend one of these in the future. Let's go ahead and jump into our program overview first, though. So some general highlights of the GDipICL. We're the only English language pathway for individuals who wish to become licensed immigration consultants in Canada or outside of Canada. So the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants, CICC, they're the organization that manages the licensing for regulated Canadian immigration consultants. And when they were going through quite a significant change prior to 2020, they put a call out for educational partners to submit proposals to be that sort of pathway, the educational pathway to the entry to practice exam, which is the licensing exam that all RCICs need to take in order to be able to practice. Queens was the lucky recipient of our English language proposal. We have a sister program in the French language at the University of Montreal. But again, we're the only English language pathway for those individuals who are interested in becoming regulated Canadian immigration consultants, or RCICs for short. Our program provides a pretty extensive education on immigration and citizenship in Canada, the policies and procedures that govern those entities, and really what we want to provide is not only that pathway for individuals wishing to become RCICs, but a fulsome understanding of immigration and citizenship law in Canada that you can then take into other roles as well. So, of course, the number one thing is the immigration consultant pathway. But we see individuals come through our program who want to take this work into government or NGO roles. Perhaps they want to focus in on human resources. Maybe they want to get into a private organization that has an international recruitment aspect to it. There's a ton of information that you can do with this knowledge. You can even apply to other law professions. Paralegals benefit from this information, law clerks, current lawyers. Lots of individuals benefit from the education that we provide in this program. And we are really proud about what we issue to our students. Our alumni are extremely talented. They are well regarded in their fields that they get into post our program. And we're, again, really proud of what they do and what we do within the program. Another item here is our program's guided by a national advisory committee. These are individuals in our communities who are current licensed immigration consultants, current lawyers, community experts, people who will be able to assist us with making sure that the education we provide is top notch and relevant to what is happening in the immigration and citizenship sector. So again, really proud of the program. Lots of great information for you to take away by entering into this program. So this is a one-pager that's available via our website. I'll just go through a few of the bubbles here because it's great to know just some general information about the program. So our program is 9 courses in total. They are delivered all online. Our entire program is provided virtually. And we have 2 different study plan types, full-time and part-time. Full-time students will complete the program in just under 12 months, which is 3 consecutive terms. So for this webinar, we're looking at September 2024 as being the starting term. That's term 1. January 2025 is term 2. And then the spring, summer of 2025 is term 3. So you'll be finishing the program just by the end of August. Part-time students, we do accept part-time applications for September intakes. There are 2 different part-time study plans, 24-month and 36-month. So that means you'll be completing the program as a part-time student in either 2 years or 3 years, respectively. Our program, like I've mentioned, is delivered entirely online. The online activities, the readings, the interactions are extremely interactive and immersive via our OnQ learning platform. So lots of great information is going to be provided to you virtually. Of course, there's going to be some additional requirements. The majority of this program is asynchronous, so you'll be doing things on your own time. The readings, the online assessments, the activities, any assignments that you're issued by your instructor, all conducted outside of a classroom setting. But there are classroom setting components for each of the courses in the form of mandatory live tutorials. So each course has either a 2 or 3 hour tutorial per week per course. So for example, a full-time student who's going to be coming in this September, they will be completing ICL 810 as the first course. ICL 810 has 3 hours worth of tutorials per week. Those are attended live. And then once that 6 weeks is concluded, you'll take ICL 820 and 830, and you'll have 2 2-hour tutorials each week. Tutorials take place on either weeknight evenings or weekends midday in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. So just make sure you're able to attend those requirements as well as completing all the asynchronous components of the program. And this brings me to the key point that I want to emphasize at this stage. This course is intensive. It's a lot of work that is put upon the students, which is going to mirror exactly what you're experiencing as an RCIC. So you really need to treat this like a full-time job. The amount of hours that are required vary from student to student because everybody learns differently, but it is significant. We encourage those individuals who do become students in our program to factor in the time commitment and to change the professional and personal requirements as much as possible. We're not saying ignore everybody and just shut yourself away, but you're going to have to make some adjustments to ensure that you can devote the time necessary to this program. So it's why we really place a huge emphasis on self-management, self-time management, and commitment. So think about that component. Take our self-assessment for more information about that. Gives you a really good holistic view of the program and the different components that you should really focus in on. I've already mentioned the tutorials. I've mentioned the readings. There's lots of great collaboration built into the program. We do find that RCICs love to collaborate with one another. It's great to rely on your fellow classmates as well as turning them into colleagues when you get into your given professions. So building that camaraderie now is going to be really key. We're competency-based as well. So as I mentioned about the CICC, there's some essential competencies built into the governing of the RCIC profession, and our program mirrors that. I have a slide that just kind of briefly highlights the essential competencies and where you can find those to learn more about how this program kind of bases its structure in order to make sure you're successful as an immigration consultant. This is a list of our courses. So they vary from the amount of weeks for each of them. ICL 810 is the first course that every single student will take. It is the prerequisite for all other courses. It's a 12-week program condensed down to 6 weeks, so it is very intensive. After that course, the course load does lighten considerably, but there still is a pretty significant time commitment required for the remainder of your studies. And then, as I mentioned, here's the essential competencies page. I encourage you to visit the CICC website to learn more about the competencies and about the RCIC profession and the licensing requirements for that profession. This is just the delivery model as an example for individuals, either as a part-time student or a part-time 24-month student or a full-time student. So as I mentioned, 3 terms for a full-time student, 6 terms for a part-time student. For the 36-month plan, part-time study plan, it'll be 9 terms and you're only taking 1 course per term. This is just a slide that demonstrates our reach when it comes to the application, where we're seeing our applications come from across Canada, globally. We welcome all students into the program. We encourage anybody who's not located in Canada to make sure you're monitoring the Eastern Standard Time Zone commitment wherever you are located. Because we're online, you can complete this program wherever you are located. But again, it's that requirement to attend those live tutorials in the Eastern Standard Time Zone that may require you to consider this program further if you are located at an international location outside of Canada. All right, let's talk about the admissions process. So there are some key areas to focus in on when it comes to admission into our program. The first two, every single applicant is going to have to cover. The number one thing here is transcripts, and it's specifically the undergraduate degree requirement for our program. We are a graduate level program at a university. The requirement is that you have completed an undergraduate degree with a minimum B average in order to be admissible into our program. So there are other components, lots of other studies that people conduct prior to our program. What we really encourage you to do at this point is to ensure that you provide all of your transcripts from all of your post-secondary study in order to provide us with a complete view of what your post-secondary career looked like. Now, while the primary basis of admission is done on that undergraduate degree, you'll need to also provide graduate level studies. So if you completed a master's, MBA, PhD, a graduate diploma at another institution, provide those transcripts. Any college study, you need to provide those transcripts as well. If you conducted a study at the CEGEP level in Quebec, make sure you provide those. And then any additional study you may have done during your undergraduate career. So that means if you conducted any letter of permission study at another institution, make sure you have a transcript from your home institution as well as that LOP institution, wherever you went, whether it was online or in person. Study abroad or exchange program transcripts are also required for this process. So if you were, say, for example, at York University for your 4-year undergrad, but for a term you decided to go to Harvard and you did a term there on a study abroad program, or maybe you went internationally, maybe you went to the University of Essex in the UK, we would need to see both your York transcript and your study abroad transcripts. So start the process of gathering these documents now because it's going to help us get to your assessment a lot quicker. Also, any non-degree studies that you've done. So if you did any upgrading or any 4-credit studies that say an online, like an Athabasca program or anything along those lines, maybe you did something in person, make sure you provide those transcripts. And the rule of thumb that we typically provide to people is that if you received credit from a post-secondary institution, document it on your application, and make sure you have the transcript available in English PDF format. That's the key way that we're going to be able to do admission reviews is if you upload these documents with your application in PDF format in English. If you possess your own copies of transcripts, you can have them scanned in black and white and upload those. If you don't, contact your post-secondary institution or institutions and have PDF copies delivered to you for uploading. There is an official document requirement for all individuals who receive offers of admission and accept them. All students incoming into the program have to have official documents sent to the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs office on their behalf. That's a later consideration. Unless you can't have your own transcripts uploaded with your application. If there's a process where you can't have your documents ready to go with your application in PDF format, and you have to have your transcript sent from your post-secondary institution for this admission process, you'll have it sent directly to the SGSPA office via either email, fax, or physical mail. More information will be provided at the end of the session. I actually have a really great link. It's the how to apply page with the SGSPA office, and there's a great drop down, step 2, compile documentation, which has all of these requirements. This is an example of a standard transcript that we receive in our office for assessment. Now, a lot of different transcripts are going to look differently. International transcripts look very different from what's being provided here. That's completely fine. We have means to assess all international credentials that are submitted for our program. What really is consistent, though, are the following. That there's some sort of indication on the transcript that it is official, that it has some sort of seal or insignia from your institution, that it's signed off by somebody. But the key area for the admission process is this section here. This outlines the courses you've taken, the grades you received, and the credit associated with each of those courses in any given term or year. This is how we conduct our assessment. If your documents do not have this listed, it's not going to be enough for the admission review process, and you're going to have to provide those documents to us. If you have documents that look very differently than this, perhaps your institution, if you conducted a 4-year degree, that would be 8 individual terms, a fall and a winter term for each of those years. Perhaps you have a single page for each term. So you would have 8 pages in total for your entire undergraduate career. Ensure you provide all 8 pages in PDF format uploaded with your application for our review. Don't miss pages, don't miss years, make sure everything is included. The item on the right-hand side is the reverse side of some transcripts. Some schools do provide a really great sort of transcript key, which gives us further information about how this school grades individuals and how they track course changes. If your transcript has this, great. Scan a copy of it and submit it along with the front side of your document. You only need to provide one of these. We'll only need to see that once. If your transcript does not have this on the reverse side, that's fine. Simply provide the information on the front side of the document. An additional document you should all be thinking about is a degree or diploma certificate. Now, we need to see if you've completed your program. If you have, and it's not indicated anywhere on your transcript, it is best to provide a degree or diploma certificate, just like this one here, and make sure it highlights your name, as well as the course that you've completed and the date that your degree was conferred. Again, we need to see proof of completion in order to make sure that you were successful in your program and you meet the requirements. One thing to note when it comes to the document submission requirement, WES or third-party document assessments are not acceptable in place of transcripts. You can have them uploaded in addition to your transcript. It helps us if you had that assessment done in the grand scheme of things, but you can't just submit your WES document. You also need to include that official transcript, which would look ideally like something like this, or that at least has the grades outlined, or the grades you received for each of the courses you've taken, and the credits you received for each of those courses as well. So some key tips for transcripts. Again, PDF copies is going to be the #1 method to upload with your application. Again, if you can't provide those, have your post-secondary institutions deliver them on your behalf directly to the SGSPA office, not to the Faculty of Law and not to Queen's University's general mailbox. There's some specific addresses that I'll provide at the end of this session where you need to deliver your transcripts. Include all pages and all years, and include all of your post-secondary study. The more documents we have, the better, and ensure that you provide all of your transcripts for the assessment process. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, transcripts will be a requirement of every single application for our program. So will references. And every application must have 2 references. Now, references are in 2 different categories, professional or academic. All applications will either have 2 professional references or 1 professional reference and 1 academic reference. There's only the 2 types. Make sure you are providing the appropriate references that best suit your application. Let's briefly talk about professional references first, because everybody's going to need at least 1 professional reference. So a professional reference is a manager or supervisor from a current or former place of business, either domestic or international to Canada, someone who knows you in the workplace, who can speak on your behalf about your professional abilities, and someone who is willing to actually provide a narrative on the reference form on your behalf back to the SGSPA office. So again, really important to note, everybody needs at least 1 professional reference, needs to be a manager or supervisor, can be a current or former manager or supervisor, can be international. It doesn't just have to be a Canadian individual. And again, someone who's willing to provide documents on your behalf, and they're willing to answer the questions on the reference form. An academic reference is very similar. It's essentially your manager or supervisor in a academic setting. So a professor, an instructor, a tutorial or a teaching assistant, somebody who knows you within your current or former post-secondary institution, and again, who knows you in the classroom, will speak on your behalf, and is willing to provide the forms. Now, the only difference here is that an academic reference is only required from individuals who have been in a post-secondary institution within the last 2 years from the month of their application. So if you completed your post-secondary studies prior to January of 2022, you do not have to submit an academic reference. You should focus on 2 professional references. If you have a very strong academic reference, you should contact us to see if you can use them for one of your references. But make sure you do have that 1 professional reference for sure locked in, and you have a backup professional reference to submit on your behalf. Now, lots of people ask, how do they submit their reference documents? How do they submit letters of recommendation? The short answer is you don't. The applicant does not submit reference documents on their own behalf. The applicant will provide contact information for each of their referees via the application. And then once the application is paid and submitted, automatically emails will be kicked out to your 2 referees for them to complete forms on your behalf. So this is why at this point you really need to have the contact information ready to go for your referees. Their current name, full name, current title, current organization, and their up-to-date email address spelt correctly as to where they will receive reference documents. So make sure that that's all good to go and correct, which is why we encourage you to talk to your references ahead of time. Start building your reference portfolio now so that you're ready to go once the application is, well, it's open and you're ready to click submit. Again, your referees will only be in communication with the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs office. You will not be involved in the reference document process. It's also important to note, no family members, no friends, no colleagues, no coworkers, no classmates. These need to be individuals who are outside of that sort of circle, and that they're willing to provide those documents on your behalf. Also, that they're willing to provide a narrative or written responses to the application, to the questions that we ask you on the reference form. The reference form has several questions. They have text boxes available to provide a narrative about your interactions with them. Make sure they're going to fill it out. This is one of the few places on the application that we get to kind of see information about you that's outside of a transcript or a numerical value for a GPA. So make sure these references are going to actually complete information on your behalf. If they have letters of recommendation for you, they can be uploaded with this process and emailed directly to the SGSPA office. Once, like I already mentioned, once the application is submitted and paid for, that's when your referees will receive these emails. Emails sometimes go to junk and spam folders. So again, talk to your references after you submit your application to make sure that they check their junk and spam. They've received an email from SGS app or the SGSPA office, and make sure that they are willing to submit that document before May 1st. And again, all applications must have at least one professional reference for review. Another component of the application is a little bit different than the required documentation. This is a component built into the application, and that's our personal statement of interest question. So we have changed this from previous applications. So if you've applied with us in the past, you've seen 2 different personal statement of interest questions. We've now condensed that down to 1. It's a maximum 400 word count response. On the application, it's 2,000 characters. If you go over the character limit, you're going to have to edit down to make sure you get under that 2,000 character amount. And again, this is the opportunity where you get to tell us about you outside of a numerical value, outside of the quantitative data that we gather within the application. Utilize the space in full. Answer the question, review the question multiple times, take your time with your response, and utilize the entire space that's available to you. A 1 to 2 sentence response is not going to cut it these days with the admissions process. We need to understand more about you. So answer the question, make sure you review it multiple times, and answer it in your own voice. It's really key that you're not utilizing another person to write this for you or any AI generation technology. We have pretty easy ways of checking if you're using AI generation technology to write your PSI response. Don't use that. This is an opportunity for you to write on your own behalf. So again, take the time, really work on a response. You can take the question outside into like a Word document, write out your response, double check it, triple check it, and then copy and paste your response into the submission box on the application. Now, while the things that I talked about earlier, every single applicant is going to deal with, the next few items are only for a few individuals. And the number one thing that I want to reference here are English language proficiency test scores, or ELPT scores for short. Many applications are going to require the submission of an ELPT score for the admission review process. This is a document that indicates your English language proficiency, and it is extremely important for our program because we want you to be successful in the English language, both as a student and once you become a regulated Canadian immigration consultant or a professional in the immigration and citizenship field. We understand the complications that this adds to a lot of applications. There's an additional cost. There's an additional stressor because you have to do an exam. I've taken one of these myself. It was not the most pleasant experience. I will be open and honest to admit. However, it is extremely important, and we are extremely stringent with this requirement. So when it comes to this section, be honest with the responses to your ELPT question on the application. And if you have to provide an ELPT, you prepare to provide it by the May 1st document deadline. So we only accept a small number of approved ELPTs for the admission review process: KLCE, IELTS Academic, TOEFL IBT, and TOEFL PBT. You can see the scores there that we require. It's primarily things over 7.0 or 70, or over a 25 out of 30 band, with one score being 26 out of 30. We accept both the online home-based versions of these tests as well as test center-based versions of these tests. So utilize the one that's appropriate for you. We will not accept tests that are not on that list. We won't accept CELPIP, IELTS General, CLB, Pearson, Duolingo. Do not ask us to accept these tests. We won't do that. We only accept these 4 here. Now, not everybody is going to have to submit this. We have some exemption criteria, so let's go over them now. The first exemption criteria is that you self-identify. Oh, sorry, wrong slide. We also don't accept any ELPTs that are older than 24 months. So if you apply January 2024 Any ELPT that's older than January 2022 will not be utilized in the admission review process. Now let's talk about the exemptions. So our first exemption is that you self-identify as a native English speaker. Now, this is a tricky requirement. There is no hard and fast definition when it comes to who is a native English speaker or not. There are a variety of elements you can consider. Things like English has been the primary language that you've utilized in the home and the workplace ever since adolescence. English is an official language from your country of origin. You have not taken any English as a second language courses, things along those lines. Again, though, it's tricky with this requirement. And because the program is solely in English, and because there's no longer an ELPT requirement at the college level, the CICC level, to write the EPE, we're extremely stringent with who needs to submit an ELPT score for the admission review process. So if you don't self-identify as a native English speaker, don't select yes on the application. Select no and prepare yourself to write the ELPT, an approved ELPT. Our second exemption may also apply to you, though. Let's take a look at this. This is our education exemption, and it's you have completed 4 or more years of consecutive full-time academic study at a university where English is the official language of instruction. Lots of information to parse there. Let's go ahead and go through it. 4 or more years of consecutive full-time academic study. That means that you've conducted consecutive study with no unnatural breaks. Obviously, between years, typically there's a summer term off. That's an acceptable break. And then an abnormal break would be I took a term or 2 off between years. That would mean you're no longer consecutive, and that would break that chain. This also extends to individuals who did a 3-year bachelor's degree, a general bachelor's degree, and then maybe went immediately into a master's program. If there was no break between there, you would meet this requirement. However, it also has to be at the full-time level. Now, this varies from institution to institution, but if you took courses off to reduce your course load down to a part-time study plan, you're no longer eligible for this exemption. The second part here that we're going to break down, university study. This does not mean college study. This does not mean other academic institutions that are not accredited to be a university. So again, really be mindful of where you conducted your studies, and it has to be 4 or more years, consecutive full-time study at the university level, where English was the medium, was the official language of instruction in your studies. So you'll have to provide some sort of proof that that's the case. Many transcripts provide that, many don't, though. So you may have to work with your post-secondary institution to provide a letter, like they will provide a letter to you that indicates that your study was entirely in English. Also, you can get them to confirm if you were a full-time student or if you took any breaks during your studies there. The admission committee who conducts our reviews reserves the right to request an ELPT score at any point in the admissions process, even if you meet one of the exemptions. So we will be reviewing these for to see if you meet the exemption criteria. If you don't, we will notify you. If you claim you do, but you actually don't, again, we will notify you and you'll have to complete the ELPT for the admission process. Our final exemption is a little bit different. It's not quite an exemption. It's more of a process that you want to take so that you don't have to take the ELPT now. And that's your interest. You're interested in completing the ESLA 150 program, English for Academic Purposes, via the Queen's School of English. So this is a great program. It's all online, it's intensive, and it is provided to our applicants who want to brush up on their English and don't want to take the ELPT or know that they won't meet the ELPT score. This is only available for our September applicants. ELPT or the ESLA 150 course will take place during the September 2024 term, which seems odd because that's what you're applying for to begin your GDipICL studies. This is how it works. If you acknowledge that you want to take ESLA 150 on your application, we will review your application without the ELPT requirement. If you are admissible based on your academic credentials, we will issue conditional offers of admission at that point. The condition of that offer is that you take ESLA 150 in the fall, so September 2024, and you achieve a minimum A grade. If you do so, you will then move into the GDipICL the following January. So it will add a term onto anybody who takes this pathways study plan. But again, it is a process to really get yourself honed in on academic English. And it's a fantastic program offered by our School of English partners. They are wonderful individuals. Their instructors are top notch. It's a great program. This pathway is not for everyone. It's not a pathway where you can select it now and then submit an ELPT throughout the admissions process to meet the condition. You have to accept this at the time of your application. It's also expensive. It's about $5,800 in tuition. That may have changed since I've last seen information about the ESLA 150. So just be mindful of the conditions surrounding this requirement. There will be a test conducted for individuals who receive, who are being considered for conditional offers of admission by the School of English. If you don't meet their criteria, the ability to meet that A, you won't be able to move forward in the process. So again, really think about this process. And for anybody who may have completed a similar program within a year, 12 months of the month of their application, we'll be able to take a look at it for equivalencies, and you might be exempt at that point. However, this is not the pathway for everybody. The primary exemptions are the native English speaking and the education. If you don't meet any of those requirements, please ensure you submit your ELPT score for admission consideration. Some of the tips here, I've already mentioned the first one, so I won't go over it again, but the key one here is the second one. We do not provide additional exemptions that you may think that you qualify for. We appreciate that you may be utilizing English in a professional capacity, even though you don't acknowledge that English is your first language. We also celebrate individuals who have a mother tongue that is not English. Canada is a great multicultural, multinational country, and we welcome individuals to bring their mother tongues with them. It's important to keep your culture and your language alive wherever you are located. However, our program is in English, and you need to be English language proficient in order to be successful in our program, which is why we have this requirement. So do not request us to provide an exemption based on professional experience, citizenship, or geographical location. None of those apply. Those are not factors in the English language proficiency. Don't request an exemption. We will not provide one. And again, with the education exemption, proof that you meet the education exemption criteria is required. Documentation in the form of transcripts, as well as perhaps letters directly from your post-secondary institutions, are going to be key. All right. That concludes the bulk of the presentation. The application now is open, which is exciting. We're extremely excited to be assessing applications here throughout the entire admissions process. This is not a first come, first served situation for our applications. You have until April 1st to submit your application. So you may have heard me talk about a May 1st document deadline. That doesn't mean you can apply for the program up until May 1st. You have to have your application in by the end of day April 1st. So make sure that that's all in, and you have until May 1st to submit documents. So those who have completed applications in the system, say you're waiting for one final reference document to come in, you'll have the entire month of April to have that submitted on your behalf. For September, as I've already mentioned, both full and part-time applications are accepted. We've changed our admission criteria since our last cycle, which was winter 2024. So if you did apply with us previously, there will be some changes that are significant, perhaps for your application. Make sure you review our website for all the updates. You apply for our program via the SGSPA application system for standard, full-time, and part-time studies, as well as our access pathway. So I didn't touch on our access pathway. I'm actually going to have an access pathway specific webinar later in the admissions process. But I can briefly tell you that the access pathway is a pathway for those to be considered for admission who don't meet our academic criteria. This is not a pathway in regards to the ELPT requirement. It's only for the undergrad studies. So say you completed your undergrad, but you don't have that B average, or maybe you didn't complete your undergrad, but you have some level of bachelor studies under your belt, perhaps a year, perhaps two, maybe a term or two. You can utilize your professional experience at that point for admission consideration, provided that you have a minimum of 5 years of relevant professional experience in the field of law or immigration and citizenship. So that means for individuals who are law clerks, paralegals, anybody in the law profession or immigration and citizenship profession, if you have 5 or more years of relevant professional experience, you'll be able to be considered if you don't meet the academic admission criteria. More information is available in that Access Pathway webinar as well as on our website. Really review if the Access Pathway is right for you. If you have less than 5 years of experience, if your experience is not relevant, if you are in a financial institution, if you're an engineer, if you're a nurse, great professions, of course, but it's not relevant to the professional experience we are looking for. So you're going to have to work on maybe improving your overall undergraduate GPA to meet the admission criteria. The application fee is non-refundable. It's $110. Really be mindful of the money you are spending. And again, don't submit your application until you are absolutely ready and all of your information is correct. We actually just recently saw that an application came in and autocorrect changed their surname. So that these things do happen. You'll have to double check and triple check your application before you submit to make sure that those errors don't occur. All decisions for our September 2024 admission cycle will be made in late June or early July. So make sure you are patient in this process. It is a lengthy process. We receive a ton of applications for all of our admission cycles, but September is our larger of the two admission cycles. So we will be taking our time to provide as many assessments as we can. There's the inter-student pathway. This is not a viable pathway for those individuals who are interested in completing the entire program. I would encourage you to complete the SGSPA app. But for those individuals who wish to take a few courses, it's a 1 course per term for 4 consecutive terms maximum. Just because you're interested in the profession or you want to do some professional upgrading, the inter-student pathway is there for you. More information about that on our website, or you can email our program team, our admissions team at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca for more. The application that you submit for September 2024 is only for September 2024. So your application will not be considered for any future application cycles. The January 2025 application won't open until later this year. So again, you're only applying for September 2024 with this current application, and you'll have to pay an additional $110 if you want to be considered for a future admission cycle. Some key tips here before I open up the Q&A. Review everything on your application. Check your name and email spelling. If your email address is spelled incorrectly, you will not receive confirmation or any email communications from our program. That means you will have a very difficult time completing your application and receiving even an offer of admission. So make sure everything is spelled correctly and is all in the application. We encourage you to be honest in your submissions, obviously with the personal statement of interest response, that you don't utilize someone else or AI generation technology. Write this in your own voice. And again, with that ELPT question, answer it honestly so that we don't have to review your application and go back to you to change your answer and then to add more documentation requirements onto your plate. Have your documents ready. English PDF format is the best way to go. If you have official copies of transcripts or you need to have them sent on your behalf, review step 2 compile documentation on the SGSPA how to apply page, which I'm going to provide the link to you at the end of this session. Work with your referees before and after you apply. Prepare them for the review reference document process, because what we see is the number one reason applications aren't completed for review is that documents aren't submitted, and the number one document we don't receive are referee documents. So work with your references and log into the system multiple times to make sure that you are completing, that you have completed all of the document requirements. The SGSPA staff are experts when it comes to document review and assessment of what is official and what's not. They will let you know via the notes section of your application if something is unacceptable. You'll also see that it wasn't received or that it's deemed unacceptable. That's a trigger for you to correct that, or else you won't have your application complete and you won't be receiving an assessment for consideration. You've just wasted $110, which is not a small amount of money these days. Make sure you watch your application in the system, double and triple check everything before you submit. Once you do submit, know that the application fee is non-refundable. You are locked in at this point, and you should be prepared to complete your application for admission consideration. All right, I'm going to open up the Q&A. Please note, though, we're asking people to not include any personal information in their questions. Do not spam your question. Don't copy and paste it and enter it multiple times. We will remove individuals from the session if that's the case. And also ask one question at a time. We receive a ton of questions in these sessions. It's not as large of a session today, so hopefully we'll be able to get to all questions. So go ahead and utilize the Q&A box to submit what you want to submit. If you see a question that you want answered, give it a thumbs up. The most popular ones I'll answer verbally, but I've got my team here to answer questions in writing that you may have regarding the process. As questions come in, I'll let you know that I have a webinar series coming up. Lots of different sessions. I believe there's 17 individual sessions or maybe 16 individual sessions from now until the end of March, which is when the application will be getting pretty close to closing. I encourage you to utilize the same technique that you registered for this session. Remain on our mailing list. Watch our Facebook page for registration information for all of these sessions. These will all be held at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we're an hour ahead for this session, but we will be moving things back to the 12 p.m. Time frame so that more people can attend. The specific presentations I would flag. Our Access Pathway webinar will be on February 13th. I'll be doing transcript and ELPT specific webinars on February 14th and March 20th, and references and ELPT specific webinars on February 15th and March 21st. If you want to stay connected with us, if you have any questions outside of what I provided to you today, or the questions that you ask within the Q&A box for us, immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca is our email address. Our website is immigrationdiploma.ca. Lots of great tabs there for you to review. And our Facebook page, facebook.com/QueensLawGDipICL. Stay in contact with us. It's the number one way that you're going to get information is attending these sessions and learning more. Number two is to ask your questions directly to our team via email. All right, let's take a look to see if there are any questions that I can answer directly. What stands for B grade in terms of percentage in the bachelor's degree? So this is a very tricky question. International, both domestic and international institutions all have their own grading system. So for example, Queens is on a 4.3 scale, GPA scale. My institution, my home institution had I believe it was a 6-point GPA scale. Many international institutions have percentage grades that aren't an equivalency. So for example, in Canada, or well, I guess I'll say at Queens, a B grade is a 60 or 73 to a 76.9% average out of 100. Now, I know that there are institutions where 70 to 100% is an A grade equivalent. So they don't quite match up. What I encourage you to do is to take a look for any resources that are available to you online for GPA conversion to a 4.3 scale. Also, for anybody who comes from an institution where they give division marks or levels, anything typically at a second division upper or higher is typically classified as a B grade. But again, we're not going to be able to provide you with a fulsome assessment until your application is complete and we receive all of your transcripts for assessment for our assessment review process. My team is fantastic at converting international credentials. We are extremely robust in our process. We will give you a fulsome assessment, and we'll let you know what the outcome is with our admission decision. Excellent question. I understand it's a bit vague and there's not much I can provide in this regard, but that's just the circumstances of international credentials and conversion over to the GPA scale here at Queens. Is it possible to submit 2 professional reference letters? No. So I'm assuming this question is an individual has 2 reference letters that they want to submit in place of references. applicants cannot submit reference documents on their own behalf. You need to have two referees. So ideally, those individuals who submitted the reference letters for you would still provide them on your behalf if they had to provide them directly to the SGSPA office. You can't submit documents on your own behalf reference-wise. So no, unfortunately, that's not possible. Somebody asked, there was no option to upload a copy of my English test. So yes, so on the application, there's not a space to upload your ELPT score. There is, I'm going to actually include this into the chat now because it's extremely important and relevant to this question. If you take a look at the fifth link I've just provided, the one that has grads dash postdoc in it, this is the how to apply page, and there's a drop-down menu. I believe it's step 4 about English language proficiency test scores. That has the submission process involved right there. Don't take a look at the score requirements. That's the general graduate school score requirements. Our program has higher ones, so utilize only the submission information. You work directly with the SGSPA office as well as your ELPT test center. So again, make sure that you're reviewing that page for all ELPT submission. Let's see. This individual also said they also sent an email to ask and verify if it was received by your office last August to September 2023. I mean, that's quite a while ago. What we do is we treat each admission cycle in isolation. While we retain a lot of documentation, I would say upload it fresh again, submit it to the SGSPA office. They will send it over to us after they review it to be deemed official. Don't email anything directly to us regarding your ELPT scores. Everything has to go through the SGSPA office. So that link, the queensu.ca/grad-postdoc/grad-study/apply, that's going to have all of your information when it comes to submitting official documents for review and approval via SGSPA. All right. You can go ahead and submit your thumbs up for other questions that you want answered. I'll be able to answer those directly. All right, somebody's asking that they have a low GPA. Is there any way to improve it? So that's an excellent question. So this is going to be a bit of a tricky area to navigate. There are ways to improve your GPA. So undergraduate studies, I mean, obviously there's lots of trickiness when it comes to that. We're talking about individuals who are in a completely new world. A lot of undergraduate students go directly from a high school or a secondary school program, from a home-based situation to living on their own. Lots of circumstances occur that may lower an individual's GPA. If you conduct other 4-credit undergraduate studies, this will be added on to your previous studies to make what is called a cumulative GPA, or CGPA for short. That means we take all sorts of different undergraduate things that you've completed and compile it into one assessment. So depending on how low your original GPA is, you might have to do a few courses. Maybe you'll have to do a couple terms. Maybe you'll have to do more. I mean, it will vary from person to person, and it really is dependent on how well you did in your undergrad. So if you were just under a B average, you'll probably only need a few courses to improve your overall GPA. If you were several grade points below a B average, or if you know that you didn't do as well as you wanted to during your undergraduate for a variety of circumstances, and you don't have that education component to apply as an access pathway candidate, you're going to need a little bit more. For those individuals who only need who need more courses, I would say look at online resourcing. Athabasca University, there's great arts and arts programs, science programs that are all online. Look to in-person programs if you wanted to conduct that wherever you're located. But that might mean that the timing for your application to our program is going to be a little bit later. You need to have final transcripts into our program by May 1st for the assessment process. So if you need to take this winter term and do some upgrading, you may want to consider a January 2025 application, or maybe even a September 2025 application. For those of you who need to take only a few courses, again, it might adjust the time frame, but there are other programs available to you. One of the programs I would encourage is the Queen's University Certificate in Law program. So this is an online part-time program that is issued via the Faculty of Law here at Queen's. It is 4 courses in length, all at the undergraduate level, and it does add on to that CGPA component that I was just discussing. I will find the website here and I'll put it into the chat. There are options. The options available to individuals might just change the timing that you're going to be applying for our program. But our program is going to be at Queen's for another 7 years at least. I mean, we're here for the long haul. So you do have time to get your application right and ready so that you only have to submit an application once and receive an offer of admission. So it's an excellent question. I understand it's a difficult question to ask. Thank you very much for putting that up there, because I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same thing. If you have that education or the experience component, though, there is the access pathway. But again, it does come with that requirement for 5 years of relevant professional experience in the fields of law and/or immigration and citizenship. I'm just going to take the time here to look up our Certificate in Law program. There it is. More information is available online. I'm going to put the link in the chat, and the Certificate in Law staff are fantastic. Go ahead and talk to them for more information. Do we also get notified when our referees receive emails from you? So not directly, not a one-for-one. So if your referee submits their documents, you don't then receive an email saying document was received in the same way that transcripts would. What I would encourage you to do is to continually go into the application system once you submit and just track to see when those documents are received. You'll see a notice. It'll say no SGS in the column SGSPA received. If it says a yes, it means it's complete. If it says unacceptable, it means you have to resubmit something, and you'll have to work with SGSPA to get that submitted on your behalf. And again, this kind of the follow-up is so that we can reach out to them and ask them just in case the email ends up in their junk mail. I would say update them ahead of time that could be the case. I believe it is SGS app at queensu.ca. They can add that to their safe senders list once you confirm, or once they confirm that they're willing to be a reference on your behalf. So then that means it'll go automatically to their inbox. But again, once you submit your application and pay that fee, and you received confirmation that the payment was received and your application was processed, go ahead and contact your referees at that point and say, I've submitted. Make sure you check your junk or spam mail folder. Good question. So somebody's saying, do you mean the transcripts are like DMC, detailed marks cards, called in India? We don't have the exact terminology. That sounds about right, what we're looking for. Again, making sure that each of your courses are outlined, the grades you received for each of those courses, and the credit associated or the weighting of it. I believe many Indian institutions have like a 100% scale, so it's like 80% theory, 20% practical, or 100% practical. Some of them have 120, 150, 200, 300. So long as that's available and it's broken down by term or by year, or if you have everything all condensed into one page, that'll be acceptable for the admissions process. All right. Can you please confirm whether transcripts that are stamped by the dean in the registrar's office and are notarized by an authentic notary are considered official? Good question. This is a question for the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs staff. We don't control the official document requirement. Again, that's why we prefer English PDF copies of transcripts to be uploaded, because then we can just go into the system and automatically assess them. Talk to SGSPA, and their email address is sgspa.reception@queensu.ca with that question. They'll have more information about notarized copies of transcripts. And you stated, because my university doesn't provide the service of sending transcripts to other organizations, even though it is a provincial university in my country. So yes, talk to SGSPA about this requirement further. I passed in second division, but have 52% my graduation bachelor's. We don't provide individual assessments. Again, it's going to be that situation. I mean, second division, upper, lower. Upper is typically what you're looking at for a B average. I would say really look into this. We'll do what we can for our assessment, but we can't provide anything ahead of time. Looks like my staff member is working on that one. Let's see if there's any other questions. Does your program have an age of admission? No, we don't. We welcome anybody who is interested in this program. This program we know is a first career for a lot of individuals, but it's also a possibility for being a second or third career option. It's also a retirement project for many individuals. Our age range goes from, I believe, 24 is our youngest, most recent, and we have those in their early 70s in our program. We welcome everybody. There is no specific designation for any specific age group with our program. There's not a mature student designation. There's not a senior discount. There's no discounts whatsoever for our program. You are assessed on equal footing against all other applicants, and we have seen great successes from all age ranges in our program. Somebody's asking the photo of our diploma where do we upload? It's not specific in the portal. So first of all, I would say don't take photos of documents. Photos of documents are extremely tricky. They tend to get very blurry. I would encourage anybody who is thinking about taking photos of documents to go to an office supply store and have them scanned. Even if those are located in a frame, you can easily remove them and then replace them once you're done. Scan them for ease of this process. All of your documents, there is an upload area at the end of the application. It will request you to upload documents at that point. You upload them then. Access Pathway webinar, when is it? The Access Pathway webinar will be on February 13th from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. MyCreds. So somebody is asking about MyCreds. Excellent question. MyCreds goes through the SGSPA office. Do not send anything to the program office. The GDipICL program, Faculty of Law, everything needs to go through SGSPA. So sgspa.reception@queensu.ca is where you should be sending any MyCreds documents. Excellent point. Thank you very much for that. What are the proofs that you are required to show that a consecutive 6 years, 4-year degree and 2-year diploma was completed in English? Probably, well, obviously the number one will be your transcripts. We'll be able to depict your timeframes there. But again, ideally you provide a letter from your institution that explains that the medium of instruction was entirely in English. Excellent question. Thank you. Do our colleges or universities need to send sealed envelopes to Queen's directly? Not necessarily, but it might be the only option available to them. So as we saw from one previous question, an institution doesn't even send documents on the applicant's behalf. So let's go through the different options. Email is the number one option. Let's use an example. So say I'm applying for this program and I previously studied at Dalhousie University in Canada. If I want my documents to be reviewed right away, I would receive a PDF copy of my transcript and I would upload it with the application. If I don't have that available to me, and if I still want to get my application in just to be done with it, I would have Dalhousie send a copy of my transcript and degree certificate, ideally, directly to the SGSPA office. The number one way that they should be able to do this is email, which would be the easiest and fastest. They can fax it, which would be the second way, or they can physically mail it. Physical mail obviously is a little bit longer, but that is a process that a lot of international institutions utilize. The address would be the SGSPA office, not Queen's, not the Faculty of Law, has to be the School of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs. The link that I provided in the chat has exactly that address under step 2, compile documentation. Make sure you check that exclusively for document submission on your behalf by your post-secondary institution. If your post-secondary institution is willing to send you a sealed and signed copy of your transcripts or documents, you can then take that envelope, not opened, and deliver it to the SGSPA office on your behalf. That would meet the official document requirement. And again, as mentioned in a previous question, there is a notarized component that may also be available, but I'm not an expert to speak on that. That would be a question for sgspa.reception@queensu.ca and reviewing their website for further information. Good question. Can we complete part-time course less than 24 months by taking more courses per term? No, the part-time study plan is established and preset. Can the professional reference be provided from my client in case the applicant is a business owner? If not, what documents will be accepted? Good question. We would accept client references if an individual is unable to acquire any professional references. For anybody who is unable to find a manager or supervisor or two of them, email our program office at immigrationdiploma@queensu.ca with the situation. I mean, a lot of people say I can't acquire a professional reference. I've been working on my own for the last 2 years. Maybe they have something prior to those 2 years that they should utilize. But for those individuals, significant high-profile clients, CEOs, CFOs, whatever the senior leadership would be of a client, you may potentially be able to utilize that. But I would ask you to email the office for further confirmation. Excuse me. I provided quite a bit of clarity on transcripts throughout this entire presentation. I would say come back to the transcript specific presentation on February 14th to learn more. For professional references, how would this work if you are the supervisor and or owner of a company? I just kind of mentioned that. Email us with more information. Provide us with how long you've been operating that company and if you've conducted any other work prior to that. Perhaps there's another reference you can tap into, but we can help you further. I'm a current student of Centennial College for Diploma in Business Studies, completed 2 semesters out of 4. I do have a bachelor's of 3 years and master's of 2 years, verified by Wes. Am I eligible for study? I mean, I can't provide if you're eligible. I mean, you have the bachelor's requirement, which is obviously the #1 requirement for our program. I won't be able to provide really individual information at any point prior to an application being submitted. It's why we host these webinars, to provide you with the information about what you require and then to guide you back to our website for you to do your own assessment to determine, yep, I meet the requirements, I'm going to submit at this point. Again, as I've already mentioned in this presentation, though, WES documents are not accepted in place of official transcripts, so you should start compiling those documents right now. Because we're after the time, I'm going to close the Q&A box for submissions, and we're going to try and clear up what we have here now. You're asking also about an English test. So the English test requirements I've already provided. Again, your bachelor's is 3 years, your master's is 2 years. If they were back to back, you may meet that requirement. But again, we'd have to take a look at your credentials with an application. And again, you may be requested to provide an ELPT score, even if you meet an exemption criteria based on what the assessment is. Somebody's asking about paralegal program studies. You obtained a Bachelor of Science in Physiotherapy, but 25 years ago. Can I still use? Yes, you can absolutely use old credentials. We have seen credentials come in from the 50s and 60s for this program. We welcome everything that you've done prior. We have to see everything that you've done prior. A paralegal individual, a graduate, the access pathway is a great opportunity for you to utilize your professional experience, provided that it's 5 years. But again, if you don't have that 5 years of experience, but you have that B average on your Bachelor of Science, we can utilize that for the standard admission process. So you've kind of got two different pathways available to you. Select the one that's best for you. Already answered that. Is this pathway useful for a career becoming an immigration officer? I mean, immigration officers, meaning an immigration consultant, or immigration officer kind of managing things in a government capacity? The answer to all those questions is yes, though. Any additional knowledge that you can get from this program regarding immigration and citizenship is going to be key. And of course, nobody can practice immigration consultancy without accreditation with the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants. So if you're trying to practice activities that an immigration consultant would be without this credential, you're practicing illegally. So if you want to do this legally and right, you have to come through our program and then get accredited through the RCIC or through the CICC to become an RCIC. We got a 2.3 in post-grad diploma and 60% in graduation, 70% in 12th grade. We're not utilizing 12th grade. We don't worry about the secondary school. Again, I can't provide a pre-assessment. We only provide assessments based on completed applications and submitted documents. Can I submit my application without IELTS results and submit the IELTS results later, but before May 1st? Absolutely. Yes, that is what the document deadline is. The application deadline means you have to submit your application before the end of day April 1st. The document deadline means that you'll have until May 1st end of day to submit documents for our review. So that means if you know that you need to submit an ELPT score for the admission review process, but you haven't done it yet, and you want to take the time to prepare and be ready for it, you can submit your application now, knowing that, yes, I absolutely want to get into this program. And then you can pay for it, submit it, have all of your other documentation ready to go, have your references now on standby to provide those documents for you. And then you can work on your ELPT score up until that May 1st submission date. Somebody's asking about other organizations that give exemptions for English language proficiency. Our program doesn't do that in regards to other work or employment or anything like that. We have very strict requirements. We don't adhere to other programs or other organizations. The exemption criteria are what they are, and we ask you to adhere to that or submit an ELPT score. All right, a couple more questions left, and then we will close it for the day. This 4 years bachelor study outside Canada will work for exemption of English language test if the medium of instruction was entirely in English and it meets the full-time consecutive requirements that I mentioned. It would be considered for the exemption. But again, the admission committee reserves the right to request an ELPT score from any applicant, even if they meet one of our exemptions throughout the admissions process. All right, that concludes the questions. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating with us. Again, lots more on the go for the remainder of the application cycle. That application will stay open until end of day April 1st. I have plenty of other sessions coming up. Continue to stay in contact with us. Email us if you have any questions. immigrationdiploma@queensg.ca. We're really excited to be back in another admission cycle, and we really hope to see your application come through our doors. Immigration Diploma at .ca is our website. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/Queenslaw GDipICL. And stay watching your email address if you've signed up for our mailing list. If you haven't, please do so via the contact page of the website that I've provided. Thank you very much, everybody. Go ahead and have yourself a good day.